of the Profit Power Hour, episode number 5. And so glad you're joining us today with Sean and Joni Wolfswinkle of RPM Preferred. Sean and Joni, thanks so much for joining in today. Super excited to have you guys on and really looking forward to our conversation today.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for inviting us, and we're looking forward to this.
Yes.
So we are going to be diving deep into what I think is one of the glossed over topics in property management. I've talked to hundreds of property managers. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but what I've recognized in talking to property managers is that no one has churn issues due to service. Okay, no one in this industry has churn issues that they can actually control. Everybody loses properties strictly due to market conditions. Okay, that's kind of the narrative that I often come across. And I think we both know differently. We do mess up. And not only do we have opportunity to improve service, but we have tremendous opportunity to control and engage the entire investment conversation, which is what I think is so profound about what you guys do. So looking forward to diving into that. And folks, if you're joining us live today, thank you. Let's just have everybody jump into chat, and would love to hear where you're tuning in from. And attendees, just change the settings there so everybody can chat with everybody. And love to hear where you're tuning in from. And I like to do this on my shows. One thing you're grateful for. Whenever we're talking about profit, it's also good to talk about gratitude so that we keep everything in the right perspective. So thanks, Bill, for joining in Virginia, Chris from Grand Rapids, Chase from Houston. Oh, you got a competitor on the phone call here today, Sean and Joni.
Love that.
And grateful to be listening from my swimming pool. Thank you, Brad. I know you just sent that message to me and the panelists and not to the entire audience, but I'm just going to be upfront about what you're doing. Finishing up a course on property management brokerage. Russ, grateful for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and grateful to be learning from the best. So Sean and Joni, I guess you guys are the best in the industry, according to Chase Coleman. So thank you guys for tuning in live, and we're going to dive in here. But I want to just set up the context a little bit. Sean and Joni Wolfswinkle are owners of Real Property Management. They started with a turnkey real estate investment solution, and then moved into property management. And today, they currently manage what is about 1,800 units in the Houston area. Is that
Houston and Albuquerque?
And, okay, Houston and Albuquerque. So tons of experience, and we're going to dive deep. What I love about your guys' story is that you approach property management from so many different angles. I don't know a lot of people who have a very well built out sort of ecosystem of both investment solutions, content, property management. Some people do it, but not a lot of people do it well. And so excited to jump into the conversation with you guys today. Of course, I'm Daniel Craig, and help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. But as you know, more than that, I'm proud to be dad of 3 of the cutest kids in the world. And if I haven't said this on the show, number 4 is coming in August. And
Congratulations.
All right. Thank you. If you guys have questions, dump those in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that throughout the day here, and really want to make it interactive with everybody. Just throw questions in the chat box. Okay. Killing the silent killer, how to reduce churn, your turnkey management and innovative retention solutions. The purpose of this webcast is to really, as always, help facilitate a transformation of thinking. Like I said, I think we often gloss over this topic, and I think for good reason, right? Sean and Joni, like nobody wants to talk honestly about why we lose us and what we do that's bad from time to time. And certainly our teams don't like engaging that conversation. But when we gloss over these conversations, we're really disempowering ourselves. And so the purpose of this session is empowerment, mindset transformation, help you move from fog to clarity around how you can optimize retention, and ultimately from mediocrity to success. So let's dive in. And the context here is the recent benchmark study that we just completed. And as we've discussed, there's a major shift that's occurred in the world of property management financial performance. We've talked about, but it's important context for today's episode.
So I think we were talking about what he really wanted to get us to get into today was talking about how we we're not perfect. So yes, we lose clients because of poor service. We make mistakes like every other management company. Our team makes mistakes, but there's a couple of things that we do really well. And one of them is going back to the turnkey model. And this might not be for everybody, the turnkey space. Obviously it's a whole nother animal within itself. So, you know, if you're not used to buying and selling,
I think he's
you're
back.
back. Can you hear us?
Guys, I love the fact that you guys are pros at this. You just kept going. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. So I just got into the show. So we just started.
Yeah, that's great.
A little bit.
And so let's just dive into what you guys were saying about your experience, your story with turnkey.
Yeah. So I told him that we're not perfect. We make mistakes, like you were mentioning before. Our team makes mistakes, but we try to learn from those. And we're going to get into a lot of that, but how we do that. But going back to our original start in property management, it really was birthed from us moving from real estate investors into turnkey real estate investments. So Joni and I had built up our own personal rental portfolio over the years and just saw the need for our clients and people that we knew saying, hey, I want to build the same kind of rental portfolio you guys have, but I definitely don't want to find properties, source them, and I don't want to manage them. And so we became the experts in providing turnkey assets. So we really tried to provide like the Charles Schwab approach to buying real estate. So you know, so they didn't have to source the property, find it. All our properties, the way our model works is we find the properties or source them or build them now, build to rent. And we place a tenant in the property and the investor doesn't come in and purchase it until we have it's rented. They got home inspections, they got appraisals, everything's done up front for them. So there's no unknowns. They don't have to worry about what is it going to rent for. Everything's done up front. And so they're making money from day one when they close, and then we professionally manage it for the investor after the sale. So
what we quickly realized through that process was that the investor, from the time that they decided to purchase that investment property, we're building that relationship and trust, right? Because a lot of these investors, it was the first property that they have ever purchased. You know, and so they were relying on Sean and I to kind of guide them through that process from the time of, all right, choosing a lender to choosing the correct title company. And then even until the day of closing, you know, handing it off to the property management company. Right. And so we quickly realized that. And so when developing our property management company, we pretty much just took up what we learned there into our property management company.
But it really goes back to we called so the salespeople within our turnkey company, they're portfolio advisors. So what we're doing is we're really developing that rapport with the client, and because a majority of them are buying out of state. So, you know, a lot of our clients come out of California, New York, international, but so they're number one, having to select a market. They don't live there. And investing where it makes sense, because in California or some of the markets that they're in, it just didn't make sense to keep buying there. So number one, we were their trusted advisor in that market, and we did everything up front for them. So like Jonah said, like finding the insurance agent and making sure they're going to be properly insured, because our market, we're you know, we have hurricanes and flooding risk.
A lot of them didn't realize that. They were looking at insurance, you know, probably from their insurance company in California. Well, it's different in Houston, right?
And then helping them with the lenders and the right people that are going to take care of them, and then to the home inspections and appraisals, and just doing all that up front for them. We created a lot of trust and rapport.
Tremendous amount of trust.
Right.
Correct. And to be honest, like 50% of our clients have never seen their property or even visited the market. So a lot of people buy like sight unseen, and that might be, you know, unique, but that's how much trust and rapport we built of them. So it's several conversations, it's several, we're going to get into a lot of the content that we produce develops that rapport and trust over time
Yeah.
as they go.
And, they're also, why they're purchasing turnkey as well is because they're looking for that hassle-free experience, right?
Mhm.
They pretty much want everything handed to them. And so if we could provide that to them, the true hassle-free experience to them, then these investors are going to come back and buy
Right.
more property because it was that easy. Like we did everything for them, which is what we're getting. And, some of our long-term clients have been with us since we
Since
started,
2010,
right?
yeah.
And actually it was cool. We got an email yesterday from an investor say, hey, like I am super excited about, being your client for over 12 years, right? And so you create just long-term clients that way.
And what's interesting to me about that is that, you mentioned some of these people are not really even investors before they meet you, like you're their first investment experience.
Right.
And that to me seems so profoundly different than some of what often goes, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but when you guys are that early in the relationship, their whole experience around property management and rentals and investment is tied to you guys. It's not like they're an investor that's just got, 17 different options, because no, you're their like one trusted advisor that got them into this in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a different approach to most BDMs and most people in the property management space. They're servicing the people that have already acquired, they're, price shopping, we have those clients, don't get me wrong, but there's the bulk of what we deal with or work with is going to be people that, yes, this is their outside of their personal residence, this is their first investment.
Right.
And then it's their first investment, and they're investing, hundreds of miles away. So number one, you have to walk with them. There is a little bit more time on the front end, but then once you built that rapport and talked them through it and done what you said you were going to do, and then our approach to the turnkey, where we take a lot of the unknowns out for them and really provide them a solid investment with everything done up front, and it's rented for the price that we advertised, and we build that rapport, and then they see the home inspection, they see the photo album and the videos, and they're excited, and then we'll get into what we do in the property management space to keep continuing that relationship. But a lot of the front end work develops that rapport and trust over time with them. But yeah,
I'm looking forward to digging into all of that in more detail. Let's just contextualize the conversation with a little bit of data for people that are on my Profit Power Hours. I always have to have some charts here. So specific question that I want to ask is, what is your greatest challenge in delivering customer experience? It's difficult to owners and tenants, staff turnover, staff doesn't care, the staff isn't fully trained, inconsistency between staff. We don't have a clear customer experience process. That was one thing that just stood out to me, Sean and Joni, of what you guys were just saying. Like, you guys have a clear process for what managing that relationship looks like over time, both as you start out and as you move on. So go ahead and jump in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw up these results. People are still giving us a little bit of feedback, but I want to get your guys' take on this data here. Can you guys see these numbers on your screen? Yeah, so it's interesting. Half of people say we don't have a clear in terms of how what you do addresses those two biggest challenges.
Yeah, and so it's for us personally, it's we focus on the investor. So we us, we're trying to build the investor client experience. So we're looking for the investor that's wanting to invest in Houston or Albuquerque, that wants that we understand where they've come from because we are investors ourselves. So we're heavily focused on creating our content to support that, creating so that we are the local experts when it comes to investment real estate, single family mainly in Houston. And then we translate as we goes into the experience with the PM side of it. And we can get into this now, but one of the things that we really that has separated us from a lot of the other property management companies is we're pod based. So if you know, understand that. And then each pod manages so many properties and so many owners. And so they get to be intimate with that particular owner and property. But within each pod, there's a customer service representative with or advisor, so CSA in each pod. Now, that's the one out of all the employees and team members that we have in each pod, they're the only ones that don't derive like income directly from, so it's not like they produce a lease or they produce a renewal, which produces income to the property management company. So, but their whole focus and why we put and installed them in our system is because they focus on retention and lower their churn because they're there to continue that
relationship. And build, yeah. And again, it starts from day one of managing that property. So some of the things that we go over with the investor is like, all right, what are your goals for the property, right? And so the customer service advisor knows exactly what this investor is looking to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years, right? And then they just build on that. And every month they are making their calls to this investor, having one-on-ones with them, if anything has changed, right? Because that will gauge what this looks like in maybe 1 to 2 years, right? And then having those conversations of, if they're not happy, why aren't they happy? Is it because they're not getting the return that they were expecting? Maybe we, had an issue with the tenant and we can resolve that, right? Those kind of things, but we are constantly having those communications with the investor so we can gauge how they're feeling.
What I love about this, and there's different approaches to this, but and everybody can find out how to do this in their own particular context with their own particular client profile. But what you guys have done is, number one, you've addressed the first point on here, which is difficult owners and tenants,
right?
By being really clear on what your ideal client profile is and building your entire service around that. And secondly, what I love is that you guys have laid the foundation to completely restructure the conversation with clients from this commoditized, transactionalized experience to something much bigger, which is investment advising. And what I'm hearing you saying is like that investment advisor, that customer service advisor in the pod, they're not like related to any of the transactional aspects of property management. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So they have KPIs just like every other team member, but their KPI is so many calls or touches per month, depending on the way the client wants to be touched. So that there's certain clients that say, hey, just send me an email every month with a recap, and that's all I want. I'll reach out if I need anything else. Some want a phone call, some want a Zoom call, and so they, depending on how they want to be touched, that's how they're going to reach out. So the customer service is is one of the only people that's very proactive communication wise within our management company. So after they close on that home, or if it's a new account that we onboard, they're going to reach out for the first 6 weeks, once a week, just to make sure, because those first 6 weeks are vital to. If we screw up in those first 6 weeks, the owner's going to let us know about it.
It's like you're starting to date somebody, right? Trying to get to know each other.
So they're going to reach out for the first 6 weeks, making sure that they got their first draw, they got their first owner statement, the property's leased, whatever's going through on their property, they're going to update them every week. And then after that, it turns into a monthly cadence that they're going to reach out once a month and touch base with that owner. So, and then also it provides a one point of contact for the owner. So they don't have to worry about who do I contact. I've dealt with this person for this and this person did. Well, no, they just have to deal with their CSA as a one point. So again, it goes back to providing that experience for the investor, which all of this translates into just lowering the churn, making people happy. And that's how we've been able to retain people for such a long period of time. So
a couple questions coming in here from Frank. How many owners does each CSA service on average?
So in our pods, actually, we do it by property base. So each pod is responsible for about 350 properties. And, the average investor owns about 2 to 3 rental properties.
Okay. That's great. And then another question here from Caitlin. Do you guys utilize global talent for your CSAs, or would those all be local or US based people?
Good question. And we actually use global employees for our CSAs. Actually, some of our best CSAs are actually remote team members. And a lot of them have come from the customer service world. So they are fantastic.
I love that. And it's like, you guys are just like breaking people's boxes right now
Yeah.
around what's possible. Another question from Chase. This is going deep. What do you all use for personality assessment internally to make sure that these positions are filled correctly? DISC, predictive index?
Predictive index is what we use.
Yeah, so we're big fans of the predictive index. So all our virtual assistants come from we own a virtual staffing company, True Work Logistics. And so that's one of the processes is right when we onboard a new remote team member, they take a predictive index score, and then so we know exactly their personality type, where they're going to be best used in the property management world, so that we're placing them in the correct seat. So it's a big that's important for us. So predictive index is what we use.
Awesome. Okay. I've been threatening to get to data here this whole time. So churn is a silent killer. It doesn't often come up in people's consciousness as one of the major drivers of the growth of their business. But what we see is significant impact happening as a result of churn. And just the numbers on this, in 2018, the average churn rate was 25%. That's now come down to 20%. Now, the top 25% of performers in 2018 were at 12% churn. That's now come down to 10%. So highlight here is, why does churn matter? It's the silent killer. And here's what I mean by this. Look at this chart. This chart is a look at all of the 153 companies that were in our benchmark study. And the blue lines are how many doors they added in a year. And the red line is how many doors they lost in the same year. Okay. Like, you don't want to be this guy right here. Okay. You don't want to be a lot of these people. If this is a really hard way to grow a business. And what you see in many cases is that churn is just completely gobbling up their attempts at growth. Secondly, churn kills lifetime profit. Okay. The opportunity to scale and grow profitable business has a lot to do with lifetime profit. And obviously churn kills the lifetime, and ultimately the lifetime profit. And it also kills organic referrals and growth. And I want to just throw up another instance of retention. And the context here on a bunch of different recurring revenue business types. Okay, so it's not property management specifically, but it is recurring revenue businesses. And what they discovered was, they basically said, hey, if you can improve retention by 1%, what impact does that have on revenue growth?
So if you didn't hear that, Daniel asked, how do we source our clients? How do we try and kind of weed out the ones that we want? I know, because that was a concern that a lot of people say, that dealing with bad owners or bad tenants. And so, and you guys, we're not perfect, so please don't, like, we get some bad ones and bad owners and difficult owners as well. And so, but on the front end, as far as like in the turnkey space, that's a little bit easier because I can weed through the investors that we want to work with up front. So before I sell a property, we're very rigid. And so meaning that we have a specific outline of how we operate, and we don't deviate from that. So like if an investor, they might come to us and want to buy a property from us, and they might want a discount. Well, I don't discount my property. So that might weed out some of these price shoppers and people that just want discounts on everything.
Because then when they come onto the property management side of things, they're probably the ones that are going to nickel and dime you.
Correct. And so we do that on the front end. We do so there's a lot of ways we can screen people on the front end by sticking to, hey, this is how we operate. This is how the process is going to be laid out. So it weeds people that aren't willing to, if they want concessions or they handle it a certain way, we're just not going to do that. And so, and we say up front, like, I get people all the time, they'll be like, hey, I want to self-manage the property. Well, that's great. But go find a property yourself and purchase that, and you can self-manage. Right. But if you want to buy one of mine, you got to at least commit to a certain period of time with the property management. So that's how kind of we screen out some people. On the PM side, our BDM, he started off as a customer service advisor. So it's really helped us because he was the one that was taking the onboarding of, he was the one having to make those calls for the first 6 weeks. He was the one that had to make the monthly calls. So he was the one, if we took on a bad owner or a bad client, he was the one that had to deal with all that. And so he got it, and he did that for what, 8 months? And before it became the BDM, which was a great experience for him, because now, as he's now the BDM, he's like, I can tell right away, this guy, is going to be extremely difficult. We're not going to be able to please him. And so he's very good at setting the expectations up front with the client.
And that's key right there, setting that expectation.
And we're not for everybody. And if that means we don't get the deal or don't get the management, then that's so be it. We're okay with that, because we'd rather take on clients that we're going to succeed with. And that, so whether it's, here's our portfolio minimum, and we require it up front, for you to pay it up front before we can move forward. And so we make those, or here's what the expectations is going to be on the maintenance. Here's our maintenance markup. Here's our management fee, and here's our tiers that we have for different, and he lays it all out. And if they're not willing to move forward with that or accept that, then we're not the right fit. If you want to, do your own make ready, and we have some exceptions that happens over time, but and a lot of times it's because we failed, and then that's what we lost trust with the client, and so that's why they'll want to do their own make readies or maintenance. But up front, it's like, if you're not willing to make those if you're not willing to let us outsource the maintenance and coordinate it for you, and you're not willing to do the make readies the way we do it, and we'll be very transparent on our process. But if that doesn't work for you, then we're probably not the right fit. And so that's it. Just we're very on the front end. Again, it goes back on the front end. We do a lot of delivery, and even on our onboarding, we have once you sign the management agreement, we use Lead Simple, and we use the processes within Lead Simple, and the pipelines within Lead Simple, and so they get videos almost once every day and Joni created all these video content, and what it is like, okay, here's what to expect your first week, here's what to expect your second week, and it just outlines everything detailed. We even go, there's a video on like walking them through it's a Loom video, walking them through their management agreement, their management statement, and outlining, okay, here's how you read your management statement out of Appfolio, and here's what to look for. So everything's like dialed in up front, so they have that we try to and some people still don't read it or listen to it, but that's how we try to do it on the front end.
Yeah, no, and I think it just and it helps with the customer advisor coming in, that if they get all this information ahead of time, right, then it makes their job easier as well.
Yeah. And is that information being provided to them in like the lead nurture process before they sign, or after they sign, or both? Like, when is that education process happening?
Both. So yeah, it's happening on the front end with the phone interviews about with the BDM. It's coming, he's having those conversations. Also, we have everything built into Lead Simple in the pipeline, so they're getting constant drips and emails and texts with messaging, with videos, delivering those messages up front. And then definitely once they sign, we really try to hammer it down and try to lay out the expectations again in videos, and then the CSA start doing those weekly calls, which really gets into deep conversations.
Yeah.
So
what I love about what you guys are highlighting here is, I had a conversation with a property manager the other day, and we were looking at their churn, and they were like, well, because I communicated to them, hey, if you have to fire a client or if they fire you, we view both of those as bad churn. And they're like, well, we think that if we fire a client, that's good churn. And I'm like, no, it's bad, because you guys could have determined that up front,
Right.
in your sales process.
Absolutely.
That's actually, a mistake. And that's what you guys are highlighting, is the importance of that screening process up front for making sure the retention happens throughout the relationship.
Yep.
yeah.
And so I want to just have you talk a little bit more about education, because I think the trouble for a lot of people is, they don't know what their ideal client profile is. They're not very specific, and there's not perhaps often really in-depth education up front that really helps the client understand what you guys are all about and really sets those expectations. So let's talk about your podcast for a little bit. And how did you guys get into that? And how does your education that comes through the podcast impact your retention strategy?
Yeah, so it actually came about during COVID, actually, when everything shut down, right? And we're like, all right, well, we need to start delivering education content to our investors out there, because our whole getting into the space, and Sean and I would travel, to and speak on turnkey and why they should invest in turnkey, and we couldn't do that anymore. And so it was just a solution for us to push out the content and educate our clients and investors.
So it was primarily internally focused, not so much new marketing.
Right, yeah. And then just being that local expert, right? And so that's kind of how it
was. We're very fortunate to have a marketing director on staff that is very good at doing all this and doing. If it was put onto Joni and I, it wouldn't happen. So, but there's some great solutions for people now where you can rent a studio for fairly inexpensive, and somebody can produce it for you. But we were lucky to have somebody on staff to help us. But like Joni mentioned before, it really we had a guest on our podcast early on that really talked about being the local market expert. And so that's really so Joni started doing a lot more speaking engagements, a lot of local stuff, a lot of NARPM events, a lot of and then the podcast. And the podcast was never to make money with it. I mean, it was all about producing content and putting these waterfall videos and what it started to do was it started to build, and it's just like everybody out there. It was awkward for us. We weren't great. I don't know if we're any better, but we just kept doing it, and with repetition and things get better, and we get better guests and everything. It started to build upon each other. And then what happens is so a good example of this would be we manage for one of the largest HomeVestor franchises. We manage all their properties, and trust me, he has good relationships with other property management companies. But the reason he brought his properties to us was, number one, is just because of the content we were providing. Like, he just saw us consistently. We spoke on same stages as he did. He just saw us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and he was like, guys, you guys are everywhere. And it's just like, you guys just are, you know it, you get it. And so that was the main reason. Like, it didn't take one phone call, and then he signed with us, and it's a lot of units. And so but that was just from all that content it's just like anything, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes consistent. So you would mention, you asked us before we started this episode, well, how often do you guys produce a podcast? Well, we do it once a week. So consistently for the last
158 episodes in today,
158 weeks, we've been once a week either getting a guest, or we come up with the content. So, and it's not easy, but it's also not hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hear you saying, the subtext is this establishes a tremendous amount of authority, that causes them to view you as much more than just a transactionalized, commoditized property manager. And so let's talk a little bit about hey, if people are on today and they're like, oh, should I start a podcast? What would be the way to think through that in terms of the best content strategy for people to establish that credibility and credibility and authority with their owners?
I mean, my first recommendation is going to be, everybody has one of these. And so, trust me, so luckily I have a very beautiful wife and somebody that likes to be in front of the camera. I don't like social media. I don't like to get on, but she does. And so it really has helped us in that she does a lot of video content, does a lot of posts, very consistent with it. And then
and it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be, a 30-second video on how to reduce churn, right? And stuff like that, and just consistently doing that and posting it,
so post it on your business website or your business social media sites. Post it on build your personal brand. That really makes an impact because it'll translate into your business. but the content, so like, we're part of a franchise, so we also own a Mr. Rooter. The top Mr. Rooter franchise owner, that's all he does. He's consistent. So he goes to every plumbing job and he records these videos of them in the sewer, them doing something, or them helping somebody out, and it's entertaining because there's a lot of sewer, the plumbing business can be an entertaining business. And so, but he just consistent with, and he's out of California, just consistent with his social media presence, which has just built and has exploded his plumbing company. But so I would start there. And I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people and they don't want to do it, but that's, in today's world, this can get you, and it's all you can, it does, the more unpolished you are and the more natural you are with your conversations, the better it's been better it's received by others. And so I would start with that. And,
and eventually you'll have enough content. Like I recycle my content, right? And so we chop it up and we reuse it.
Yeah. So we cut up videos we do when she's speaking on stage or when I'm speaking, and we just cut it up into smaller, and a VA does that, a virtual assistant cuts all that up. Our virtual assistant does all our posting and establishes all that. So it's not necessarily it has to be done by you, but fairly inexpensive. It can really great. And then you can build on and start a podcast and do that. But I would say the cheapest and most effective way is just using your phone.
That's great. Yeah. And what I hear you saying is, before you commit to producing a weekly podcast episode, just start doing something simple.
Yes, something simple. Yep.
What you guys are saying reminds me of a presentation. Chris Clothier is with Memphis Invest, and they do turnkey management. Do you guys know Chris?
Yeah, we're good friends with him. Yeah.
Okay. And he said something at a presentation at PM Grow a few years ago. Basically, effectively using content marketing means understanding how every experience and interaction your audience has with you is a chance for you to shape their view of and their decision-making process as they relate to you. So I love that. It's a chance for you to shape their view of you and their decision-making process as they relate to you. And so as they're making a decision around buy, sell, hold, different property management company, you've had a chance to shape their entire view through profoundly impactful content. Let's talk a little bit about how you guys work with your team. And one of the things that I find is that when we try to encourage our clients to segment their churn, like, hey, why did people actually leave us? It can be hard to get really solid answers and sometimes like actually get the truth on why people left. How do you have that experience with your team? How do you get to truly understanding why people leave?
So constantly training our team is the biggest thing. Like we're a big fan of EOS. So we do EOS within our company, right? And so we have a leadership team, and then we, have our morning huddles. That's a chance for us to kind of get to have our time with our entire organization. We also have customer service workshops, so we can overcome some of these difficult conversations maybe that our team doesn't necessarily want to have with these owners, right? So it's constantly training our team to have these conversations with our owners.
Yeah. So but to answer your question, we majority of the time we know what was the reason. It's either in the termination letter or in the monthly call that the CSA is having with that particular owner. We're getting down to the reason why they're terminating. And so it's, yes, a lot of them are sales, but there's also a lot because and it's usually
miscommunication. Responsiveness, right? Maybe to some maintenance or whatnot. Not being proactive enough.
So you get all the traditional, we're too expensive, we didn't respond quick enough, or what was the other one you said?
Proactive, being
proactive. So even with it, so we still get those, even though we have CSAs that proactively reach out. But one thing that I think that's helped at working with our team is Brett, who produces the show and came up with the podcast. He started once a week. We take an hour out of our company's time, so they're paid for an hour in the morning to do this customer service roundup. And so what we do is we focus on either we read books together, so we'll talk either about a book, and it's usually customer service focused, or Brett will produce a content that we're going to go over. It could be a call, so we listen to a live call. We maybe and we're never going to embarrass somebody, so it's always the calls that we usually do with our entire organization are calls that were great calls. Like they just delivered. They had maybe a difficult conversation with his owner, and then just turned him around. And so we'll listen to those. We'll go over what Brett says a lot is command and control. So taking command of a conversation and control of it, because that's like a big one is, you know, we want to be, since we are the local experts and we are the experts, here's how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to go about it, not letting the owner dictate to us how it's going to go. So there's those conversations. So an hour a week, we're investing into our staff on training that will help them provide a better customer experience. So
that's super helpful. A couple of questions that have popped up here. One of them was, what is EOS? And I don't think we're going to dive into that question right now, but it refers to entrepreneurial operating system, and it's really a management and accountability framework for small businesses. And then another question that came up here is when it comes to the way that you guys engage the buy-sell conversation. Let's just unpack what that looks like. So, you know, the market's heating up, people are seeing the prices of real estate go up, or, you know, maybe it's going down. Like, how are you engaging the conversation with these advisors around how to navigate these market conditions, and how are you guys capitalizing on that?
Yeah. So a couple of things that we kind of look at is when the owner investor decides, hey, you know, I think I'm thinking about selling the property, right? What's your thoughts on this? And so what we've kind of trained our customer service advisors is kind of look at the bigger picture, look at to see, okay, is the tenant's lease coming up for renewal, right? Or I mean, if the tenant's already moving out, then that's probably a lot of times we're not going to be able to, well, we probably could sway them, but most likely this investor, he's going to want to sell, right? But having those conversations early on has really helped us with that, right?
Yeah. And then they so they first start by trying to convince them. So they first get all the facts. So the CSA will have a conversation with them. Why are you selling? Why are you considering? Go over if the tenant is still locked in a lease for a while, they're probably going to have that conversation. Like, now's probably not a great time to sell because the tenant's still in for another year or another 6 months. So let's have this conversation as we get closer to renewal. So they'll try to prolong it. If they can't win the client over, it usually gets escalated to a pod lead, or in a lot of cases, it gets escalated to Joni. She's probably one of the best at saving the client. And so what Joni usually goes through in detail is, number one, she'll go through the comps. So she'll give them what they want. They want to say, what can it sell for? She'll have those conversations, but she'll also show them, hey, what if you hold this property for another year? What if we just renew the tenant's lease? Let's look at maybe what that property would be worth. We'll look at what your mortgage might be paid down to, and she'll have a more one-on-one, more advisorial type
like,
of.
where are you going to put that money, right? You're going to put it into another property, because you're going to need to be able to find another property. If you're doing a 1031, well, there's timing issues with that as well, right? And so we kind of go through all of this with the investor. And you know, if they decide they still want to sell, well, then we will provide that turnkey solution for them and sell it for them, right? And so we're making profit there. And then we'll go and try to resell it to our investor database to try to keep that investment
in-house. Yeah. So I mean, so it goes through, I guess, different stages. So we don't just roll over and just take the termination and sell it. It goes through it's again, you got to have your processes like documented, so your team knows too. Okay, what happens in this case? And if it can't get saved, it moves up to another person, and then
last case scenario moves up to me, right?
And then she really has that one-on-one, like, and the conversation starts going into questioning, like, where are you going to put that money? Like, are you right now in today's market with all that's been going on? If you sell that, number one, you're going to pay a big tax consequence, and then if you're not 1031ing it, which is going to have some issues or complications with the 1031, but then where are you going to put that money? Where are you going to put
Right.
it that you're going to get a better return than what you're getting
Mhm.
on your return right now?
And that's
So-
what the conversation I had when I said, unless you absolutely have to sell that property, right? Like when we had a client that just went through a divorce, he had to sell, right? But unless you absolutely have to sell it, I wouldn't sell it.
Right.
But she's
Yeah.
very authoritative in the way she speaks to them, and that's why it gets to her eventually, is because she has a very strong conversation with them, which is almost like, like
Okay.
yeah,
And most of the time they're like, I needed to have this conversation because in my
Mhm.
mind, I wanted to sell it, right? But now
Mhm.
you make a lot of, you're making a lot of sense. Like, why would I
Mhm.
want to sell this investment property? It's only going to get more expensive, to buy another property, right?
and a lot of times they're just listening to the news, or they heard
Mhm.
the TV and what it's saying, and real estate market's going to crash, and so they're
I
like,
need to
they're
get rid of it
fearful.
right now.
They're fearful. They gotta get it out now, and but yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, like, what would be the success rate of having that conversation if that's the first time you've ever talked to them about investment strategy, right? It is your position and authority as an advisor is going to be a lot more suspect, right? Of course, you want me to stay. You're just my property manager. But
Yeah.
if you've been their investment advisor all along,
Right.
then you're the first person they listen to. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I appreciate your guys' patience with my internet today as I'm traveling. And I just wanted to circle back to a couple of the data points that I wanted to show folks here. And the one that I was on as the internet glitched out is essentially just the impact of retention. I think a lot of times, Sean and Joni, we get these, dreams of adding more doors, and oftentimes acquisition, lead generation becomes a lot more paramount in our mind than retention and retaining the owners that we have. And that's why you see those charts with people losing so many units compared to what they're adding. And this is just a really interesting study that basically shows if you can improve your retention by 1%, then your growth rate increases by 9%. And that's just tremendous. Like, that's how impactful retention is. But this is just some interesting data around churn and Yelp ratings and Google ratings. And the basic point here is, one of the things we looked at is, like, can you correlate churn rates to Google and Yelp ratings? And the answer is no. Honestly, those numbers don't tell you a lot about what your retention is. There's just not a lot of correlation. As churn goes up, there's not a major correlation to your Google or your Yelp ratings. But what there is a correlation to is profitability. And essentially, this chart just shows as profitability goes up, we generally see churn going down. And to put that in concrete numbers, the most profitable companies are averaging around 19% churn. Down here, the least profitable companies in the industry are averaging around 24% churn. So there absolutely is a connection between churn and profitability. So if you're listening today and you're like, okay, how do I know what's good, bad, or ugly? Target a churn rate of 10 to 18% and really understand why your owners leave. And maybe just a question for you guys, Sean and Joni, do you guys have any particular way of documenting this and tracking, the specific reasons why owners leave?
Yeah, so again, we everything, we're big fans of Lead Simple and the new processes and inbox and all that. So yeah, one of the processes in Lead Simple is in the termination process. It clearly, that CSA is having that conversation. They have to document in there what the reason they were leaving. And so we do monitor those. And so, like, in our L10, which goes back to EOS meetings, we'll look at all those terminations and see what's the trend and see how many. And we'll look at, and a lot of times we already know what's happening or why these people were canceling. And just like everybody else, some we wanted, they were just, they were difficult clients, and it's a good for both sides. But in some cases, like, hey guys, this is because we really screwed up here, and we just dropped the ball. And so in that case, we'll go over those definitely with that particular pod, but then also if it's justified, we'll go over it in the customer service workshop with our entire team and really go through it. And we won't call on names. We'll just give we don't publicly call out people, but we'll go through that whole transaction and what we could have done better, where we dropped the ball, how we lost that trust with that client. And sometimes it's sometimes out of our control. Sometimes we really screwed up,
Right.
and so
And a lot of times a lot of it is when, the tenants have given their vacate notice, that's when the owners decided to part ways. And so we looked at it as well and said, you know what, we're not providing the level of customer service. Yeah, we might be doing it to our owners, but we need to do better with our tenants, because ultimately, if that resident is having a good, positive experience, then there's no reason for them to leave. That means there's no reason for the owners to want to sell or, get rid of you.
If you can keep the tenant happy and keep them renewing, at a decent rate, and it's not like the owners wanting more, a big increase, but everything is, if everybody's happy and along the process, it provides a better experience for everybody, all stakeholders. And so, yeah, like that's a perfect example. That was a switch we made a couple of years
ago. Once we tried, when we found out, okay, this is why these owners are leaving, is because the tenants are leaving, right? They weren't getting that experience that they deserved.
That's awesome. So that's actually the last thing we're going to talk about here as we wrap up here, is what you guys are doing to improve the resident experience and the overall experience for the owner as a result. Before we jump into that, folks, as you're listening here, where do you stand? Where are you on lifetime with your clients, churn rate, retention, lifetime profit, lifetime revenue? And do you understand how that's impacting the profitability of your business? We want to help you with some tools to get clear on this. You can get your copy of the NARPM Financial Performance Guide to get really clear on how you're tracking over at narpm.org. And this is available to everybody for free. And we really recommend you getting on the NARPM accounting standards to get clear on how these metrics are actually performing in your company relative to key industry benchmarks. So after this webinar, I'm going to send you guys a metrics calculation tool where you can plug your data in and get clear on these metrics and see a lot of different information, not just churn, but other key metrics as well. And so what is the fastest way that you can impact the lifetime profit of your clients and your portfolio? We'd love to help you answer that question. And we just invite you to schedule a financial review call with our coaching team to discover how to get clear on your current churn rates and lifetime profit, discover your true profit potential, and really get help identifying your number one opportunity to maximize the lifetime profit of your clients. So here's how that works. You send us your profit and loss statement. We plug that into our format, and we help you calculate some of these key metrics, your lifetime profit, get clear on how you can understand some of the significant opportunities in your business that typically result in $50,000 of additional profit per year. So that would be helpful. Just say yes to this poll here that I'm going to throw up, and we'll reach out and schedule that call with you guys, and would love to help you take action on today's call with some of the great things that Sean and Joni have shared. So let's wrap up, Sean and Joni, and just what are some key thoughts that you have for maximizing the relationship with the tenant and that experience to produce that overall stickiness with the owners?
Yeah, so we kind of look at it, there's three things: communication, right? Being proactive and being responsive. CPR is how I look at it, right? And so we really focus on those three things with our team, and kind of like how we have with the customer service advisor, we have a tenant relations department within that pod. That's their sole job, really, is to touch on the tenants, make sure that they are okay, make sure they don't need anything, right? And just provide that extra level of customer service to them as well, just like we do with our owners.
Yeah, that's great. And in terms of measuring that and staying clear on that, is it just kind of touch points with the tenants, or do you guys have any kind of scoring or surveys that you guys leverage on a regular basis? And then any particular, like, unusual, nice touches that you give your tenants outside of the communication, just to really show that you appreciate them? Any unique things you do there?
Yeah, so we, as far as like the KPIs, So we do track response time, and so on the work orders, we're tracking how quickly we're handling the work order and resolving the issue, how quickly we respond to the emails and phone calls or voicemails. So the response times, and then so because that's vital, is how quickly we're getting back to them. And then we, as far as the experience, like when they first move in, they get a welcome packet. So there's it sounds cheesy, but they actually appreciate it. So it's like I think it's a pizza gift card, and then a roll of toilet paper. Because you think about it, when you move into the home, you never have toilet paper, or you're when you're moving in, and then pizza is always ordered when on moving day. So we try to just start it off on the right track.
Yeah, and we do surveys as well. So once a year we'll send out a survey to all of our tenants. What are we doing well at? What's can we improve on, type of thing. And we go through those surveys with our team, so we know like where we need to improve, right? Same thing with our vendors. We ask our tenants, how well did our vendors do, right? Because then every year we look at that, and if our vendors are scoring low, we have those conversations with them quarterly, right? And then try to get them back on track. If not, we get rid of them.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, hey guys, thank you so much. This has been really fantastic, and I love the holistic approach that you're taking here, and really just appreciate you guys sharing your experience here with everybody today. I do think we have a couple of questions real quickly. One question, wanted to just ask you guys, when it comes to the sourcing of your talent, you mentioned that you guys use, I think you have your own global talent business. Any just top recommendations for people sourcing global talent that they might be able to use to create these kinds of experiences for owners and tenants?
Yes, I mean, we're obviously biased because it's our company, but
hey, feel free to mention your company. I don't know if you do it third party.
It's True Work Logistics. We focus on the property management space, even though that's not the only client we serve. But number one, they get trained up front, so they spend at least 2 to 3 weeks in training, learning Appfolio, Lead Simple, Property Meld, a lot of the softwares that PM companies use. So they come in trained. Doesn't mean that you still have to train them on your own specific processes, but we spend a lot of time again on the front end training these remote team members. Ours is a Mexico-based company, so which does really, really well because being in Houston, we have a lot of Spanish speaking. Same thing with Albuquerque. So for us, it's really helped to have a lot of our remote team members being able to speak Spanish. It's helped us significantly with the vendors, and I mean, our remote team members are fantastic. So it's over half of our staff, and they do a phenomenal job. And they do everything from talking to the clients, talking to tenants, talking to vendors. We have them in every
so just kind of give you a perspective. So we have 42 employees, and that includes global. Half of them are RTMs, remote team members. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we use them on all our other entities as well. And a lot of the back end stuff for the turnkey stuff is all done through remote team members.
So you can find the talent.
Yeah, our plumbing company, dispatchers, all that, CSRs, they're all remote. And so it's really provided. And what was your first question? Is that, did we answer?
No, yeah, you answered the question, just like, how to go about sourcing and the opportunity there.
And
something that we do as well is like, we'll have strategy calls with the PM companies, right? Like, what are some of the pain points that you're facing right now to help guide them on what remote team member they need specifically. And so we help do that. And I can, share my Calendly link with you if any of the guests want to have that strategy call with me.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Appreciate that. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for joining today. And up next on June 21st, 12 p.m. Central, we're talking about mastery maintenance performance based on really the only maintenance performance data set for single family property management. And really excited to share that with you guys and have you join us on episode 6 of the 2023 Profit Power Hour series. So Sean and Joni, thanks so much for the shares today. Really, really appreciate the insight.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much for having us today, Daniel.
All
Thank you.
right. Take care, everybody. And
ya.
thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.